Ladies and gentlemen, I'm annoyed. I'm very annoyed. You want to know why I'm annoyed? Because conversations like this continually come up in the fighting game community over and over again. I swear this topic is recycled to all hell. Fighting game players and fighting game viewers and all of the community together are so brain broken when it comes to topics like these. And so I'm going to give my take on this, but I also want to express how harmful that things like this actually are in the grand scheme of things. So this person, Murdoink, makes this post about, I believe this game is Astrobot, one of the bigger new games that has come out. And they have references to Street Fighter, to Tekken, and to Guilty Gear. And he decides to go and make an incendiary post, knowing exactly what he's doing, saying that this is the big three of fighting games. Now, first of all, we need to understand that when people make posts like these, the only purpose of making this post is not to like start a discussion. It's not to do this. It's literally just to get likes and clicks and retweets. They don't really care about this discussion, right? And if you go to their profile, low effort shit poster, right? So I just want to express that first, because I think the fighting game community is really bad at filtering what they decide to get mad about, right? They're really bad at like saying, oh, this is just literally not made in good faith, and so we're just not gonna cause things to trend off of this. Unfortunately, that is not the case this time, and this has been making a lot of rounds. And so we're gonna talk about this, and this will be probably the one time, hopefully, that I have to go over this, and then hopefully you guys will listen to me the first time, and you inevitably won't because nobody listens. Okay, so this big three argument. People are really bad about making this conversation. So I would equate this to the same conversation as in shonen anime, right? Which it's funny because I've been in both communities heavy. I'm in both communities heavy, both anime and fighting games, and they have the same exact thing. So they have the big three argument in anime about the big three of shonen, which I believe was Naruto, One Piece, and Bleach at the time. It refers to a certain era where those three shows or those three series dominated everything else, right? And kind of like set the path for a lot of big shonen anime today. Now, I do not care at all about shonen anime personally, not really. A little bit, but really, I'm not super into it. About fighting games, something I am really into, and so like I'm seeing some of the similar conversations on both sides. Some people believe that the whole big three thing should refer to a certain era, in which case, Mortal Kombat definitely has a conversation there. Some people are focused on the present right now, in which case, you could talk about Guilty Gear and whatnot. Let's just go over all of the things that people are saying. So common arguments about this. By far the most common thing that I see is people talk about Evo numbers, right? This is what everyone wants to bring up. They want to talk about how, this particular year, Street Fighter and Tekken far above everyone else. By the way, I would like to point out this gap between Street Fighter, Tekken, and the rest of the lineup is pretty severe. Like, it's very large. And then everyone else, right? And obviously Mortal Kombat is near the bottom, and Guilty Gear Strive is third. That's something that comes up a lot, but I think there's a lot of nuance that's being missed whenever we talk about things like this. So first of all, let's just address the elephant in the room. Yes, it's a bad year for Mortal Kombat, right? Obviously, it's a bad installment. It's a bad launch. They've had troubles dealing or trying to get Mortal Kombat 1 to gain traction in the content sphere, in the fighting game entrance sphere, like all that. They're just having challenges. And why are they having challenges? Mostly because of the company that owns them, Warner Brothers, right? Warner Brothers is a huge fucking company that you have to answer to whenever you when you make a game based with one of the IPs that they own, right? You have to answer to them, right? Every single thing that you do, have to have them sign off on it. They have to approve of it. And this time, Warner Brothers' involvement has really stifled the potential growth of Mortal Kombat 1. And it's experiencing some challenges that you would think would have been addressed already, because there have been issues with these same things in the past. But because of, you know, having to jump through those hoops and get them addressed, we're kind of experiencing the same thing. So that's what leads to certain things, like Mortal Kombat's Pro Tour was really bad this year, right? I did a whole other video on Pro Tours. You can go watch that if you want my takes on that, right? Their port was quite bad, right? The game was like unplayable on PC because the port was really bad on launch. I'm pretty sure that this has happened with Mortal Kombat's in the past as well, where the port is kind of like a second thought and afterthought. They don't really pay much attention to it, and so it leads to a big gap in the quality of gameplay from platform to platform, which is a problem because PC gaming is becoming bigger and bigger, especially in the fighting game community as time goes on. And so like you not making sure that the biggest gaming platform has a viable experience is a very bad thing, right? You're stifling your potential numbers to that of just consoles, right? Which consoles still have plenty of players, but it would be even bigger if you have, you know, a good PC experience and then also crossplay on top of that, right? They really struggled with that. And so like these are like big challenges, right? And a bad launch, we've learned time and time again, when it comes to fighting games, a bad launch can fuck you for the rest of your game's life. You could be the best game in the world. If you have a shitty launch, it's really hard to get back the people that you lost, right? And that's what happens. People make those snap decisions, those snap judgments off of their first experiences. As we say, first impressions means so much, right? And then they'll say, you know, I'm not playing this, and they never come back, right? That's a lot of people. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. A lot of people are not down to give second chances, and that's because time is something that's valuable to people, right? And they're gonna make those judgments, and they're gonna, you know, there's so many fighting games out there nowadays, it's hard to justify revisiting something that you had a bad experience with in the first place. Okay. Let's talk about Strive, right? Strive is the game that I see most people talk about, like, oh, Strive should be in the big three instead of Mortal Kombat, right? And I think people are having two different conversations. I think the more I see about this this topic, the more I think that people are having two completely different conversations. So let's go and look at some more incendiary posts, right? So when people make posts like these, so again, I said this back whenever I did a talk about tribalism in fighting game communities, and this just goes back to the same thing. This is the same thing again, right? This is just tribalism. This is about fighting games and their communities going to other fighting games and their communities and telling them, we're better than you, you're not worth a shit, this is why we're replacing you, this and that, right? Very harmful in the grand scheme of things. And all this does is hurt the community as a whole, and I want to express that, and I hope people realize that as time goes on. These posts are only harmful. They're only harmful because you're only presenting them, you're presenting it in a way that is purely incendiary. You're purely inflammatory. You're only trying to get people to argue here. You're not trying to promote thoughtful discourse. You're not trying to address any of the issues that whatever games may have, and every single fighting game has issues to address. Let's not even get into that, right? You're not doing any of that. You're just making this post very low effort. You're just putting the covers of games and you're putting a greater than sign, and then people eat this shit up. Thousands upon thousands of likes, retweets, all of that, right? This is the type of shit that we need to filter, right? These are not the type of interactions that we need to be having, and the more attention we give to people like this, the worse it will get, right? Straight up. Okay, moving on. Moving on. So more discourse that we've talked about this. So this is a take that is pretty common in this. The big three will always be Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, and Tekken. Respect history. So like there's a group of people, and it's a pretty significant group of people, because you got to keep in mind that fighting game community is pretty old. In the grand scheme of things, they've been around for a long time. There's a lot of people that are in the fighting game community that have been around 15, 20, 25 years, right? And to them, I would imagine, for an overwhelming majority of them, to them, this would be the case, right? They're saying that the big three refers to an era where these three games dominated, right? They dominated everyone else. It was not close, right? Not even remotely close. It was these three, and it was no one else. And they kind of paved the way for fighting games as we know it today, right? And there's validity to that. There is, like, when we talk about impact, if we're talking about impact on fighting game history, there is a conversation to be had here that Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, and Tekken have the greatest impact in fighting game history, and therefore have solidified themselves as the big three until the end of fighting game history, until the world ends, right? There's a conversation there, right? You're gonna get into this argument with old heads a lot. You're gonna get into this is like a conversation that is kind of unique to fighting games because our community makeup is like almost equal parts like old heads and zoomers, right? Like they're like both sides, like it's pretty intermelded, right? It's not too skewed one way or another, and so like that's why I think this has gained so much vitriol, because we have equal amounts of people on both sides that will make these arguments on either side, right? And so this is an argument, right? And this is a take, and I think this is a fine take, right? This is okay. This is okay to think this way. If you believe that the big three refers to an era just like the shonen big three referred to an era, that's totally fine, right? That's like totally fine if that's the way you think. But there is the other side, right? And I want to just scroll down here because I think this is another bad faith thing. So just like I said that fighting game players are brain broken and they're geared to like latch on to these really low effort posts that are literally meant to just make you mad, right? Equally, Steam charts have brain broken fighting game players even more, right? Even more, because we now live in an era where, since this information is so readily available, people are willing to use it as the end all be all of their conversation, right? And this is disingenuous at best, right? If you don't know about the layout of fighting games and how they work, and you just post this because you believe that this is a good indicator, that means you just don't understand the layout of the community. You shouldn't be participating in these conversations in the first place, at least until you gain more knowledge and understanding on it, right? If you do understand the way that fighting games work and the layout of the community, and you post this in response to a take like this is just bad faith, right? This is bad faith. Why is it bad faith? Because fighting games don't primarily exist on PC. They just don't, right? They just don't. So you taking Steam charts, the Steam charts is the only one that's available, right? Like PC is the only way we can see player base like this. You can't see this for console. It would change everything if we could, right? It would change everything if we could, but we can't, right? We can only see them for PC. And so that's why they latch onto this and they want to show, you know, player base, this and that. And again, this is disingenuous because of, like I said, the quality of the ports, the fact that fighting games in and of themselves are event-based. And so we have like severe fluctuations in how many people are streaming the game, playing the game, this and that, depending on, is there an event going on? Is there special content being recorded? Is there this? Is there that, right? There's so much nuance here that gets thrown out of the door whenever you decide to just take Steam charts and try to compare two games. I think this gets us nowhere. Yes, Guilty Gear is a bigger game on PC, but that's a given that Mortal Kombat's port is fucking dog shit. And also Strive is a newer game. And Strive also has unique draws to it as well, right? And I don't want to gloss over that. I don't want to make it seem like, you know, these people that believe Strive is part of the big three now don't have an argument. They do. They absolutely do. So let's talk about some of those, right? Because I think if we're talking about the big three and you're looking to quote unquote replace, or if you're saying that the third one is anything other than Mortal Kombat, right? An overwhelming majority of the people that are putting another game there are putting Strive there, right? I haven't seen many other arguments for any other game being the third in the big three. And that's because, again, right, whenever we talk about the Evo entrant numbers and all that, it's the third highest, right? Ignoring the fact that the gap is still quite large, right? Once again, I want to revisit the fact that despite Strive being third with 2,058 entrants, this gap between Strive and Tekken is massive, right? Can we just make sure that we all are in agreement here? Right? We're all in agreement here. This gap is still huge. And so this is going to contribute to what I say later down the line, right? But Strive has a lot of things going for it, right? It has, I would argue that it has, like, by far the largest social media presence, right? The social media presence with Strive is staggering They have so much traction on social media, for better or for worse, right? There's always people talking about the game, about its characters, about designs, about this, about that. There's bad faith people talking about whether Bridget is actually trans or a male or a female. There's a whole lot of discourse involving Strive, right? It has a lot of social media traction, like by far the most, and that's valuable, right? Because that's a unique draw that like other fighting games have had trouble emulating, right? Even Street Fighter doesn't get as much, right? And it's the biggest game. It is the biggest game in the fighting game community. It does not have social media presence like Strive does. It has content presence like on Twitch, on YouTube and whatnot. It does not have social media presence like on Twitter that Strive does. It is pretty crazy. It is pretty nuts just how much Strive is like on Twitter, right? It is insanity how much traction it has on Twitter. So that's one thing, right? The second thing, and this might be a hot take to some, right? But really listen to the words that I'm saying. Strive is the most important modern fighting game. It is. It's third on the list of entrants, but it is the most important modern fighting game. Why is that the case, Khalil? Why is it the most important modern fighting game? Because Strive has done something that revolutionized fighting games as we know it, right? The same argument you want to make for Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter and Tekken revolutionizing and paving the way for fighting games back then, right? Strive has done that in the modern era in 2021. Why? Netcode. It started everyone having rollback. That's a game changer. That's a part of fighting game history, whether you like it or not. This change is so significant that it literally affects the infrastructure of the way that we play fighting games today, right? It was the first big game to be like, okay, yeah, we're just gonna do the really good netcode thing, at least Japanese made, right? Obviously, the American made games, Killer Instinct, Mortal Kombat, all that, they've had good netcode for a while, but it started the wave of Japanese devs saying, you know what, we actually do need to have good netcode. And now in 2024, 3 years later, pretty much every series has it. I don't think there's not a major series missing rollback netcode at this point. I don't think it's even been retrofitted onto games like Sam Show, right? That's how impactful it is. It's very, very important what Strive has done for modern fighting games. And so, yeah, I think the people that are saying, you know, Strive is part of the current big three, I think that's also valid. That's also valid. And people should not get as mad at each other over things like this, because all this is putting labels on things in the first place. It doesn't actually change anything for you to call a game big three or call a game not big three. It doesn't actually matter, right? It doesn't change anything. It's just our brains as humans, there's a lot of people that always want to put everything into categories and labels and put things into boxes, right? And we want to believe that everything exists only in these boxes and they don't cross over with other boxes and this and that. And that's what people get mad and they argue with each other about. But in reality, these things don't matter, right? They don't matter at all. Now, just a little bit of a history lesson, right? A little bit of a history lesson. This is one of the reasons that people always bring up Mortal Kombat, right? Mortal Kombat is a very important game in fighting game history, obviously. This is a list of the best-selling video game franchises. Now, I don't know how current this is because obviously all of these games have had new installments, so I'm not sure how quickly this is updated. But if you look at Street Fighter and Tekken, they're right next to each other, 58 million, 53 million, right? We got to go all the way up here to find Mortal Kombat at 83 million. So like it is by far the best selling fighting game, right? By far. And so for that reason, since it is by far the best selling fighting game, it stands to reason that it also has the largest casual appeal out of all of the big fighting games. And that straight up is true. that straight up is true. Like there's a ton of casuals that love Mortal Kombat and they buy and they don't do anything competitive. They don't care about anything competitive. They just buy Mortal Kombat and they play Mortal Kombat and they don't get into arguments on Twitter about it, right? There's their whole world over there. It doesn't exist to us. Like we don't interact with them that much. And so we don't see their side of things, right? If you go on YouTube and you look up like Mortal Kombat 1 all fatalities in this, you'll see videos with millions of views with literally just people just taking all the fatalities and putting them in a single video, right? Millions upon millions, entire channels with millions of subscribers dedicated to doing just that for Mortal Kombat. it is a thing and it is impactful. And I want people to understand that as well, because I think there's a lot of people that are relatively new to the fighting game community, and that's rich coming from me, because in this whole fighting game thing, I'm technically a zoomer, right? I haven't been around that long in traditional fighting games. But I think a lot of people miss that. They don't understand because they don't play this game, they don't watch this game, and so they don't understand why it was even heralded as this big in the first place, right? It's easy to miss that if you're not paying attention. It's very, very easy. Another thing, right? It was impactful enough that Mortal Kombat 11, the last installment, had a summit, right? I don't know if you guys know about the Summit series, but the Summit series is usually only given to traditional fighting games that are really popping, right? They're like really big and really, really popping, right? Obviously they were regular for like Smash. They did a bunch of melee summons and a bunch of ultimate summons, but that's how it started, right? So it stands to reason that they continue to do that. But the two traditional fighting games that got summits were Dragon Ball FighterZ in 2018 and Mortal Kombat 11. Those were the only two. There is no other traditional fighting game that got this treatment. That should tell you something as well, right? that also speaks to the impact of the series and how much people were excited for it and were looking forward to it when it came out, right? Of course, like I said, this is the installment before MK11. MK1 had a significantly worse launch and all of that, but these are just things that I want to add to the conversation because no one brings this up. Okay, here's the smoking gun, right? After all of this that I've talked about, right? What is Khalil's take? What is the big three, right? My take is that there is no big three. There is no big three. There just isn't, right? And why isn't there? Because the gap between the top two and the rest of the field is so staggeringly large that I think it is almost an insult. It is almost an insult to lump a third in there whenever it's like disingenuous in a way, right? Again, go to Evo numbers. These two games are close. Street Fighter and Tekken are by far the most, right? And they're pretty close to each other, all things considered. It's about 600 entrant difference, right? As opposed to 2,600 entrant gap between Tekken and the third game, right? As we exist right now in fighting games, there is no big three. It does not exist. And we should stop using this term because all it does is cause shitstorms, right? What is it really? Let's talk about how things really are, right? Let's talk about how things really are. So this is Sully and Gnome, which is an analytics site that you can use for content on Twitch, right? It pulls a bunch of different analytics and it presents them in a way that is easy, quote unquote, easy to read for everyday people. This is very, very valuable if you're a content creator, by the way. This shit is real good. This shit is real good. Okay, so I took all of the games that were on the Evo lineup. So I have all 7 here. I excluded Third Strike because no one's really making content or doing like streaming for Third Strike like that to my knowledge. Obviously they have Jazzy Circuit, they have a scene and everything, but in terms of like regular viewership, regular content, it's not really there compared to the other games. So I only took the 7 modern games, right? I only took the 7 modern games on here. So let's look. Let's take a look. What does this tell us, chat? What does this tell us? So red is Street Fighter, right? And you can see now, so, and keep in mind that again, there is nuance to this, right? This is only on Twitch. This does not involve YouTube. And also, fighting games are event-based, right? And so we experience super, super big spikes in viewership, especially whenever there's an event going on, right? You can see this for pretty much any game. If TNS is running a tournament for your game, you're gonna have higher viewership, right? If Evo, CEO, if a major is going on, obviously you're gonna have bigger viewership. We're gonna have spikes next week for UFA, right? That's just gonna happen. So do take this with a grain of salt, right? Because even this diverse of a tool does not tell you the whole story. Okay, Street Fighter is huge. Street Fighter is massive, right? And it is trumping everything else by a long shot. And why is that? It is because Street Fighter has a super diverse content base in terms of people making content for the game. It's not just Americans making content for Street Fighter. Of course, we had Say Jam Slam just happen recently, right? But we also have things like Raccoon Cup, right? Which takes place in Japan, involves a bunch of big VTubers. Street Fighter 6 is a worldwide phenomenon, and so that is why it has such a drastic gap with everyone else when we talk about who is streaming the game, who is watching the game, right? And so Street Fighter is far and above everyone else. However, that being said, we do see instances of Tekken peaking up above it, right? And a lot of that is kind of the same thing that I was talking about, where like when events happen and this and that, like Tekken can hang a little bit. It's the only one that even remotely hangs with Street Fighter, right? That being said, the rest of the fighting games down there, right? And it might be a little bit harder to see. We have some blues for Mortal Kombat. We have green for Guilty Gear Strive. Like, you can barely see it, right? It doesn't make waves nearly as much as Street Fighter or Tekken, and that is just the stark reality of fighting games in 2024. If you're not Street Fighter and you're not Tekken, you're just not popping as much as you think you are, right? Now, all of these games have merit, and I think all of these games are great in their own way, and people should continue to play whatever fucking game that they want, and they shouldn't care about dumbass takes on Twitter, right? However, if we want to be objective in any sense, right, I think that this illustrates a very big difference, right? There's a big difference between how many people are interested in Street Fighter, how many people are interested in Tekken, and the rest of the games, right? Let's go to the next graph. This is not average viewership. This is the average number of people streaming it. So this one is closer at the very least, right? And so this is the number of channels that are live with the game at any given time. So again, Street Fighter, way bigger than everyone else. Then we see Tekken peeking up a little bit into it, right? And then third on this list, right, is actually Mortal Kombat, right? It's actually Mortal Kombat, at least between my bound set are the 1st of August to current, right? Right, it's Mortal Kombat, and it's like clearly Mortal Kombat, right? It's not like it's ambiguous between Mortal Kombat and the next game. It straight up is just Mortal Kombat with the next amount of channels, right? And so, like, this is another thing that people don't really talk about. Why is that? It's like, yeah, there's a lot of people that are interested in Mortal Kombat. There's still a ton of people that like the game. They like Mortal Kombat, they like the series, this and that, and they even stream it in some cases. They don't get a ton of viewership by any means, but like, they're there, right? This matters, and that's why it's important to cover your bases when you talk about analytics, right? I'm trying to introduce nuance back where it's been taken away by other people, right? And then we have, Strive, and then there's a pretty big gap with the rest of the three at the bottom. So these are like things that have been taken away from this conversation that I think do add value. And so I don't think it's a conversation of who the big three is. It does not matter. And in fact, I think this conversation is literally just harmful, and the only people that benefit are people like this that shitpost about it and get all this traction and all this and all this that, because while people want to make arguments about, oh, this is big three, that is big three, this or that, nobody is taking a stand to change the issues that any of these games have, and all of them have problems. Mortal Kombat has big problems on launch. They have problems with Warner Brothers. They have problems with this, problems with that. Even Guilty Gear Strive has issues. Their lobbies still fucking suck, right? There's still so many issues with a ton of these games. Even the biggest games and fighting games still have issues that need addressed, and nobody wants to talk about how we get there. Instead, they want to create this divide and create these wars about our game is better than your game, and that's all it is. All it is ego. All it is people wanting to believe that they made the right choice, right? They want to believe that I made the right choice in picking Street Fighter and you didn't by picking Grand Blue, and so I'm somehow better than you. It's tribalism all over again. It's harmful. It's stupid. Stop doing it. Stop this big three shit. It does not matter. Play the fighting games that you enjoy and that you like, and let other people do the same. Thanks for watching this one. I'll see you in the next.